We're continuing the Days of Discontent, and this devotional today is called Through Christ. Philippians 4 might be the most commonly known verse about contentment. Coming from the writer Paul, he makes this bold statement that he's learned to be content whatever the circumstances. He says he knows what it's like to be in need and to have plenty, and that he's learned the secret to being content in every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, living in plenty or want. So what's that secret, Paul? Well, one has to read the next verse and all the verses prior to know. Verse 13, which comes right after Paul makes these bold statements, says, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. In other words, we cannot be content in our own strength. We need a higher power. Remember we said in another Devo that the psalmist quieted his own heart and settled his own soul? While it's true that we have a choice to make when we're discontented, we need him to help us carry out that choice. What about all the verses before Paul's statements about being content? Well, he gives lots of directives and instructions to rejoice, let your gentleness be known to all, don't be anxious about anything, but pray and present your requests to God with thanksgiving. It's then that peace that transcends understanding will guard our hearts, and guard it from what? Days of discontentment. Train your mind to think true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy thoughts. And then what? Peace. So that progression of right thinking takes training, and it really is a progression, like stairs from one level to the next. It starts with thinking the truth about God and others, right thoughts that are lovely, and it ends with praise. So why then are we mostly discontent if this chapter tells us all of these things to avoid and to live in peace? Well, maybe part of it lies in the way we view troubles. Paul mentions that in being in want and uses the word troubles, and we know from reading about his life that it wasn't all roses. He ended up in prison. He needed folks to pray for him often. He suffered shipwrecks, and we read that he had some sort of thorn in the flesh, a weakness. He was interrogated and ridiculed. So the takeaway here is that living a cushy life is not the source of contentment. It's quite the contrary. Learning to thrive in all sorts of trouble through practicing the disciplines that we just talked about is the secret. It requires choice making, discipline, training, prayer, thanksgiving, all the things we've talked about if we want to move out of our days of discontent. I don't know about you, but this progression of training often takes place daily in my life. It's not a one day I do all the list and I'm content the rest of my life. It's more of I wake up in the morning feeling discontent about a list of things, and my day begins on a path toward contentment or not. I start by rejoicing and being gentle instead of snappy. I take my requests to God and give thanks or not. And isn't this the start of my day where those swirling thoughts of discontent begin, and the day can be rocky and my thoughts can spiral downward instead of upward? And it's this morning to night discipline, training, much like getting up exercising daily, even though we'd rather stay in bed and eat ice cream, and still we want to wind up healthy and fit. So maybe we're always searching for the secret to contentment as working towards avoiding trouble at all costs in our lives, to be conflict-free, and that's the problem. Conflict and troubles in this world are present, but they don't have to define us or break us, but rather contentment is available if we remember the truth of our relationship with Christ. It's something we forget every night as the woes of the day choke out the energy we started with in the morning. But then sleep takes place, the sun rises, and it's another day to choose. It's not easy to take all of these minds of ours that are prone to wander and to steer them back on the right path, and that's why we have the Good Shepherd that leads us to still waters, green pastures, rescues us from cliffs, and ultimately pursues us with goodness and mercy, all the while preparing a table before us in the presence of the enemies. That table, full spread of provision, sitting right in the middle of darkness with scary things in the dark around us, is where contentment lies. We just have to follow him, and we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us to be content.